Perhaps the most impactful front of World War II wasn't fought by guns and planes, but by scientists. On December 17th, 1938, German chemist Otto Hahn and physicist Fritz Strassmann created nuclear fission for the first time by bombarding the nucleus of an atom with neutrons. By the end of the next year, the Germans and Soviets had invaded Poland, marking the start of World War II. Physicists around the world realized nuclear fission could be used to make the most important weapon of war: a really fucking big bomb. But the Germans had discovered fission first. They had a head start on making the atomic bomb, which brings us to the topic of today. This is the story of the secret mission to go behind enemy lines and stop the Germans from making a bomb that could destroy the world. There are a few key ingredients to making delicious food known as hydrogen bombs, or just regular atomic bombs. Either way, one of the most important ingredients is water, but not just regular water, heavy water. Now, to put it simply, because I'm sorry, I don't know chemistry, I'm not Walter White, water is made of 2 hydrogen atoms and an oxygen atom, and heavy water is made of 2 deuterium atoms and an oxygen atom. Deuterium is very similar to hydrogen, except that its nucleus has a neutron, which hydrogen does not, leading to it being about 10% heavier, and if you drink it instead of regular water, you die. Anyway, it's not safe for human consumption, no matter how tasty it sounds. What you really need heavy water for is a nuclear reactor. It was extremely important during World War II because using a nuclear reactor created plutonium-239 as a byproduct, which could be used to make an atomic bomb. Put simply, heavy water was extremely sought after during World War II because whoever had the atom bomb first had the power to bring an end to the war. The only problem was that heavy water could only be produced at one place on the entire planet: the Vemork hydroelectric plant in Rjukan, Norway. The Allies and the Germans arrived at the conclusion that they need heavy water for atomic weapons at around the same time. As Norway was neutral at the time, the Germans simply asked to purchase heavy water from Vemork, ordering 100 kilograms of it per month, despite the facility only being able to produce a tenth of that. However, 3 agents from France's military intelligence, the Deuxième Bureau, got there first. They convinced the director of the facility to lend them everything Vemork had, knowing that if the Germans won, he would be killed. Dodging German spies who were aware the French were up to something in Norway, French intelligence were able to transport the heavy water safely to Paris. On June 14th, 1940, the Germans invaded Paris. French scientist Frédéric Joliot-Curie, I think, hid the heavy water in a Bank of France vault, but realizing they would need to get it out of German-controlled territory before it was too late, they decided to give it to the British. And so the British got a dinky little cargo ship called the SS Broompark, which snuck off with the entire global stockpile of heavy water. And this is just the beginning of the story. The Germans were not very excited to find out that the heavy water they'd ordered would not be delivered, so they changed their tactic and invaded the entire country of Norway during 1940. I mean, it wasn't the only reason they invaded, but the Germans did get full access to Vemork, meaning while the Allies had enough heavy water of their own, the Axis powers could still produce heavy water and possibly use it to create the atomic bomb first and maybe blow up London, which would be the good ending. I'm just kidding, British people, I'm sorry. The heavy water was stored in the basement of the Vemork plant, covered by a huge layer of heavy concrete, thick enough that it would be very difficult to actually destroy the heavy water using conventional bombing. You'd need to get inside. The plan was simple: parachute in a small group of Norwegians with experience in the area. That small group would locate a landing zone to land military gliders who would storm Vemork and, using timed explosives, destroy the equipment the Germans used for their heavy water, along with the stockpile that they currently had. The first stage began on October 18th, 1942. 4 Norwegian commandos parachuted into the Norwegian wilderness. They were dropped off very far from their target and needed to ski for multiple weeks, traveling through frigid temperatures and harsh weather, but they were familiar with the area. The 4-person Grouse team contacted the British upon making it to the landing site and told the British the code phrase that they had seen 3 pink elephants that morning. Operation Freshman was a go. On November 19th, 1942, 2 gliders, each containing a team of British soldiers, were to land at the site near Vemork. They were towed by British bombers and were to be dropped above the site then glide down themselves. However, with awful weather and visibility, the mission took a tragic turn before it even began. One of the bombers crashed into a mountain, its glider crashing nearby, killing everyone on the bomber and many of those on the glider. The second bomber could not locate the site as the beacon the Grouse team had placed could not be linked, and it turned towards home. But its glider broke off of its tow rope and crashed near the first glider, killing many more. The Grouse team attempted to reach the crash sites and help the survivors, but the Germans reached them first, finding the crash and capturing any survivors. The survivors from the gliders were tortured and then killed by the German secret police, who learned of the Allied plans to destroy Vemork. The four-man Grouse team was forced to flee into the Norwegian wilderness, risking the very high chance of starvation or hypothermia, overturning themselves into the Germans and being lined up and shot. The Grouse team survived for months, eating lichen and moss barely fit for human consumption. It took them over a month to find a single reindeer for a decent meal, but the British weren't done with them. The Germans had heavily increased security, making a mission to destroy Vemork nearly impossible. But with perhaps the entire world on the line, Operation Gunnerside was a necessary risk. 6 more Norwegian commandos, led by a man named Ronberg, parachuted into the wilderness on February 16, 1943. After a few days, they were able to locate the Grouse team, giving them much needed food and supplies, and bringing the team together for a mission that would lead to almost certain death. The night of February 27th would have to be one of the most daring operations of the entire war. The Norwegians were given capsules to swallow if they were captured that would make them not be breathing anymore and stuff. One side of Vemork was protected by a natural ravine, with a heavily guarded bridge being the only way across. So the Norwegian operatives decided to ski down into the ravine, cross a frozen stream, and climb the other side. The Germans thought this was impossible, and as such were not guarding the area. The Norwegians, lucky that one of them had bought some metal cutters on his day off in England, cut through the side fence of the plant. The saw the British had provided for them would have taken too much time and made enough noise that they would have been found. They snuck past guard towers, spotlights, and landmines and made it to the plant. However, the side door that they were going to use to get in, that should have been unlocked, was locked, as the Germans had taken extra precautions. However, the group was able to use their memorization of the Vemork blueprints, which had been stolen by the Norwegian resistance, to fit through a maintenance tunnel and make it into the facility. Once they made it to the basement, they got the explosive charges ready. They set the charges for 2 minutes and then decided to change the fuses out for 30-second ones so they could hear the explosion and make sure it was a success. However, a Norwegian worker at the plant unexpectedly walked in and discovered them as they planted the charges, but was luckily cooperative and helped them at risk to his own life. Before the fuses could be lit, though, the plant worker realized he couldn't find his glasses. I can't find my glasses! Seriously, they put the entire operation on hold for a couple of minutes and found the guy's glasses. Then they left a 45 ACP Thompson submachine gun to make sure the Germans knew this was the British and not the local resistance. Then they lit the charges and ran for their lives. The entire stock of heavy water produced during the German occupation of Norway exploded. Equipment used to make more was also destroyed. The Norwegians ran out of the facility and back into the ravine, and 3,000 German soldiers were dispatched to find them. Luckily, they all escaped. Some skied 200 miles to Sweden, while others stayed in Norway to fight with the Norwegian resistance. But the Allies weren't quite done with Vemork just yet. Operation Gunnerside was a success from all metrics. There was no loss of life on either side, and the stock of heavy water had indeed been destroyed. However, over the following months, the Germans rebuilt the part of the facility which had been destroyed and repaired and replaced equipment, leading to the base being nearly operational again by halfway through 1943, which is where the Americans got involved. They decided to go with their favorite tactic. 143 Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress bombers flew over the plant, dropping over 700 bombs. The majority didn't hit the target, but Vemork was still heavily damaged. A second bombing raid happened later that month. However, as stated before, the basement where most of the equipment was stored was under a heavy layer of concrete, meaning these raids were largely unsuccessful. The Americans were nice, though, and did attack during everybody's lunch break, so very few people died from the raid. But the Germans still decided they'd be better off moving the heavy water all the way to Germany just to be safe. However, the Norwegians were not done sabotaging them just yet. The Germans had been taking the heavy water through Norway's railway system, and with tight security, it would be pretty difficult for the Allies to sneak on board. However, there was a lake that the Germans would need to pass via a railway ferry, and this would prove to be their downfall. On February 19th, 1944, 4 Norwegians snuck on board the SF Hydro with explosives. Upon making it inside, they were quickly spotted, but they were able to convince the guard who found them that they worked on the ferry and were just planning to spend the night on the boat, which worked. Then the 4 Norwegians snuck below deck to the keel of the boat and placed approximately 20 pounds of plastic explosives to the inside of the hole in a 12-foot ring. The explosives were timed to explode while the ferry was near the deepest part of the lake, and the Norwegian resistance members got off the boat. On February 20th, the explosives went off and the SF Hydro began to sink extremely quickly. Nearby Norwegians got in their boats to try to save the crew. However, 14 Norwegian crew members and 4 German soldiers died, with 29 people having survived. It is sad to say that over a dozen Norwegian citizens did die from the incident, but the heavy water did successfully sink to the bottom of the lake, never to be recovered by the Germans. The effects of these efforts from the Norwegians, British, and even the French at the beginning cannot be overstated. It was key to stop the German nuclear program, as we really have no idea how bad it could have been had we not stopped it. Anyways, if you guys did enjoy, make sure to subscribe and comment more topics you'd like to see a video on, but I'll see you all later. Bye bye.